Welcome to Bible Boys, a podcast where two ex-evangelical siblings and an ex-Catholic non-sibling watch Christian media and either praise or condemn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Michael.
This week, we take our second step into the Conjureverse with the 2014 film Annabelle. Before we go back and watch Rosemary's Baby, please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and comment on our video, and follow us on Twitter at @TheBibleBoys.
So did you appreciate the great value Rosemary's Baby? Because that's basically what this film was.
This dumbass franchise made not one, but two fake made-up movies about this real doll.
3.
Wait, Annabelle Comes Home, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
One we're thankfully not watching, because after this, I have no more desire to learn about this cloth lady.
Wait, you're not obsessed with Annabelle?
No, I'm actually the opposite of obsessed, which is that if I ever find the writer, if I ever, meet him in a dark alley, I'm going to give him a wedgie so hard his eyes roll back.
Michael, this rant, I'm warning you guys, I have like a 15 to 45 minute rant about how the last movie we watched sets this movie up terribly.
That's because this movie came out before that one.
Which makes it worse, because they knew what puzzle pieces they needed to match, and they just went, that's too hard.
So I will argue that they did not say that's too hard. They retconned themselves. They went, this is actually a better story. Because, let's be real, what we watched last time was way better than this movie.
I agree 100%.
1000%. This movie is this is not a super duper long movie, but it's filled with about 50 minutes of pointless nonsense.
Yeah, I really forgot how, the first 30 minutes of this film really makes you think, oh, we're going to have, a really interesting, commentary on the satanic panic, about, how pregnancy is, a really interesting, Rosemary's vibe, where it's oh my god, this is this crazy thing that happens to your body, and it can be kind of horrifying. Nope, they weren't interested in any of those things.
Yeah, let's just get into it. All
right, so we actually begin with a scene that will open our next week's film, where there are two nurses talking about their experience with the haunted doll known as Annabelle. And that is in the future, because we actually flash a little bit backwards, and we meet our protagonists, John and Mia. So Mia is pregnant, and they're talking to their neighbors at church, Pete and Sharon Higgins. And Pete and Sharon are important because we actually met them in our last film, having adopted a young Janice going by the name Annabelle, who we know is possessed by the spirit of Annabelle, who for some reason doesn't have a name. That's a quibble I really have. Why do we'll meet the nun Valak properly in Conjuring 2. Why are we naming some demons and not others? This one had a lot of screen time to not be named.
The fandom wiki does give it a name. I have absolutely no idea where they got it from. I mentioned it in the last podcast offhandedly.
It's Malthus, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But we really don't, at least to my recollection, maybe in Annabelle Comes Home, we delve into this, but it just feels very strange to make 3 films about this doll and not have a canon name, whereas Valak the Nun has, of course, that magical name.
Well, we'll never know, because we'll never see that movie.
No, I've already seen it. So, we see our couple talking, and they are talking to the Higgins about baby names. John wants to name the baby Phyllis, which just seems like such a crime to this child. It's also 1970. Like, John, don't name your daughter Phyllis. Thankfully, he doesn't.
There was the great line of, like, he's like, yeah, that's what my grandmother's name was. And his wife's like, yeah, but I hate your grandmother. She's terrible. Everyone hates your grandmother. And he goes, it's true. She's the worst.
This set me up so much for this movie. I was like, I have extremely high expectations now, because if you start the film with, like, dunking on your protagonist's grandma, it's just like, okay, this is going to be a good movie.
Yeah, there was some, like, really quippy dialogue, again, in the first 30 minutes that just disappears. It was like they had they really did the whole, meme of the drawing of the horse, where the first fourth of it is super in depth, the second fourth of it's a little detailed, and then it slowly devolves into basically a stick figure. That's this film.
Well, we've said this before, the Conjureverse is horror Marvel movies, and all the way up to the fact that there are quips everywhere in the Conjuring movies that we will watch later, but it's fun to see that still in these last two, where there's still a couple goofs just running around.
Yeah. And we cut to Mia watching TV, and she's actually watching news reporting about the Manson family and the Tate murder, and Manson is on TV. John is like, hey, Mia, don't watch that. The baby can hear it. And, to be fair, John just didn't want his baby to be a murderino, which is a hate crime on someone who is a murderino.
Knowing that baby's age range, that baby is going to be very into a little program called Snapped that will come on later.
Let's be real, that baby is listening to every true crime podcast.
Well, that baby's like 50 now.
Yeah. So one night we cut to actually a scene that we should be very familiar with, where Mia is woken up by a scream next door at the Higgins home. So we, the audience, already know, guess what? Annabelle and her boyfriend came over and killed her parents brutally. But Mia knows this. John seems to be like, nah, I'm going to go over and figure out what's going on. Which, can we just talk about this toxic masculinity bullshit? If I hear my neighbors screaming this, like, blood-curdling scream, I'm not going over there to be like, hey, what's up?
Well,
Like, best-case scenario, you walk into a domestic abuse scenario. Worst-case scenario, it's a satanic ritual killing.
Well, first of all, knowing this time period, he was probably like, he's just putting his wife in her place, because he's a terrible, terrible human, like all dads during this time period. But also the fact that there was a scream that it was that was the scream. It was and then she instantly died.
Yeah, John is set up to be kind of a shitty dude. It's established that he is, at the end of his med school, and he's about to start residency, so that's why he's very stressed and is very concerned about getting sleep. But yeah, we'll learn that John is, there's a reason why he's portrayed terribly.
Kind of a doofus.
Absolutely. And, if I am able to teach my fellow co-host and the audience anything, it's that, like I tweeted at Aaron, AMAB, all men are bastards. And that's really the true through line of every single one of my picks from now until forever.
So, some things happen in this scene that are cartoonish in their time frame, because this entire sequence takes place in, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and in that amount of time, the people that go in and murder is it the Higgins?
Yes.
Yes, the people that go to murder the Higgins, the couple, go from the Higgins house to our main character's house, all in the time it takes John to walk in the Higgins house, see their dead, get just covered in their blood, he rolled around in that stuff, and then come out, tell his wife to call the cops. His wife calls the cops, who, don't worry, she gives them no information. She says, I need an ambulance, here's the address, and then hangs up. Cool. But don't worry, the police will be here instantly, guns blare, and just ready to go.
Well, this is very, D&D logic, where every turn is 6 seconds. It's just they really just sped through combat, but actually what we're looking at is, a good 12 to 15 rounds of combat here.
It's a bonus action to call the cops, and it's a full round action to worry about your doctor husband.
So when Mia runs back in, she actually hears a voice saying, "I like your dolls." And again, this is where I was like, oh my god, we're gonna, instead of doing like the creepy, deep, growly demon voice, we're gonna really lean into the creepy little kid voice. I was very excited about that, especially the first time I watched this. That doesn't actually happen. They don't actually follow through on demons using creepy little kid voices. And a little bit of free advice that I won't charge any of you, prospective directors for. Little kid voices are way creepier than demonic growls.
The two times I was scared in this film, one of them involved the child, and I don't think they deployed it well. Let's set up the doll stuff because it's important in this scene. So the creepy voice that says "I like your dolls" is of course Annabelle Higgins, but Annabelle Higgins is admiring Mia's collection of dolls that she just sort of has. Because I guess it's, back in the 70s, it was totally normal for people to just have rooms full of dolls and to keep them in their child's bedroom. I don't... Mia loses sympathy points for having a room full of dolls for me. But specifically, John said something stupid to Mia earlier, and to make her feel better, he reveals that he spent a lot of money on a porcelain doll that has a really fucked up face, who is the aforementioned Annabelle.
I like the arc of Annabelle, how, when we first meet her in the last film, she's, very pristine and, traditional porcelain doll. And by the end of this one, we, leave her where we find her in the original Conjuring film. So, incidentally, I have made Annabelle the protagonist we're following this spooky season, and I really appreciate that through line.
I need to say, 2 plot points and then go on my rant, if that's cool with you boys.
Yeah, let's go.
So, the home invasion happens. John, superhero, suplexes people, fighting people off. There's a very bad knife pregnancy scene that made me uncomfortable, where Mia gets stabbed in the side. Baby's fine. And then eventually the cops come in after 3 seconds of being aware of what things are going on, and they kill the male intruder. The female intruder kills herself. Her blood drops on the Annabelle doll. Okay, so established in the last movie, we understand that Annabelle, the woman, is the demon. The demon fully possessed that child, and that demon then grew up, had a normal life, and then joined a cult for demons, which is the equivalent of, Stephen King joining a George R.R. Martin fan club. It's just kind of wild.
No, I actually have to defend this. It's actually very Rosemary's Baby. This cult is trying to bring this about, right? And so imagine if you have an entire religious cult founded around demons, and you meet someone who has all the hallmarks of being possessed by demons. You're going to get really pumped about that.
Yes, but hear me out as we continue down this path of logic. So then, the demon's goal is to possess someone and take over their body. This demon has succeeded. So then they come back into this house and go, "Yo, my old vessel," or "Yo, a vessel that looks a whole bunch like mine." And then goes, "Well, time to go back," and then start this thing all over again. I'm cool with that being the plot point if they were just these movies love demons to have a step, a list. They're trying to do A, so B, so C. But this demon is just kind of doing, and I'm cool with that. But just say demons be doing 'cause evil. I wish they would just say that.
Well, I think it's a numbers game, right? It's how many souls can I take?
I guess if you look at it like that, it makes a little bit more sense. But I do think Josh is onto something when they say it's very much okay, we're trying to recruit people to our satanic cult. Oh, you're an actual demon? Wow, this is great. I'm such a big fan of your work. How about you go kill yourself and summon a different demon? Because you're just not really what we're looking for. Sorry.
The reason for this is because in this movie, that woman, Annabelle, is not a demon.
Yes, no. Like
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
talking in my other podcast, Mortified, we just rewatched Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, a game that does a lot of retconning to the entire franchise, and I think that, like Michael alluded to, they Annabelle Origins, or whatever it's called, retcons this movie to not make... This movie doesn't make sense, but I think the Annabelle creation does a smart thing, which is saying, okay, we started off on the wrong foot, forget all that bullshit, which I do appreciate.
Yeah, and it makes more sense when you like live in the creation realm rather than just the self-titled realm.
Each one of these movies, I'm okay with how the doll becomes haunted, but combining both makes it like impossible to understand what this demon. I bet when it got back in the doll, it was like, fuck, here again. I guess I'm back in the doll. Man, I missed eating food. It was nice to touch things.
So I kind of view it as like, we all have that favorite pair of pants. For this demon, its favorite vessel is this creepy doll. It's like, I like wearing human skins from now and then. Like, it's more efficient to like get the numbers game of the souls I want. But I kind of missed you, and it like put the pants on and they fit just right, and like its ass looks really good in them, and like it gets hit on a lot with them, and it's like, yes, this is my home.
I also want to point out, I hate the line when Mia gets the doll. She says, now my collection is complete. And that made me go like, is there an Annabelle collection? We know who made the dolls. Are you collecting all of his dolls? Because those don't look like his dolls. Did he model those dolls off of a big market? And then, like, this is the name brand version of that doll? I have so many questions.
I like the idea of, and this is just, like, Michael canon, this is not at all in this universe. I like the idea that there's, like, this random, like, brutal, terrible, awful, like, murder in this orphanage, right? Like, with this missing girl, and, like, this guy was like flayed alive and like his fingers broken back, and that spurred this like market for knockoffs of his dolls. And that like Hasbro came about because they were like, hey, what's a great idea? If we just go ahead and recreate all these dolls of this guy who was brutally murdered like 5 years ago, and we're gonna mass market them and make everyone collect these creepy porcelain dolls. And then an original just, like, snuck in. So, like, it's expensive, right? Like, it's name brand. But the actual Annabelle doll is worth, like, $1 million. And then the one that he bought is, like, $100. And he's like, oh, so expensive.
And then Hasbro goes and buys Wizards of the Coast, which becomes the producer of Dungeons & Dragons, fueling the satanic panic. It's a conspiracy.
How did we, like, accidentally connect all of these threads? I love it.
I do love this conspiracy theory that happens inside of this universe. But anyway, do you know where I can buy a Ouija board? Oh, that's right. Any toy store that sells Hasbro stuff.
Uh-huh.
Oh, shit.
Uh-huh. We've uncovered something, actually. So, I think it's important that not only does a drop of Annabelle Higgins or Janice's blood drop onto the doll, it like drops into the corner of her eye and like comes down like a little tear. And I love this because it's like implying that. So I actually do kind of view that they may have alluded to the fact that Annabelle Higgins was possessed, or at least like a conduit of something evil, because that seems like very intentional filmmaking of like the drop of blood is showing, hey, this doll is now corrupted. The doll itself was not the problem. And that's very established in universe, that the doll is not haunted. It is a tool of the demon.
Because there was a small part of me that thought, like, oh, they got the doll, and that was like a homing beacon for the Annabelle to be like, time to kill my parents, and like, but again, I read into this way too much. This movie still has a lot left in it.
Yes, let's not get too wrapped up. So Mia is fine. There's damage to her cervix. She has to stay bedridden. She's obviously very upset. John is like kind of taking care of her, but also, like, kind of being insufferable and not understanding why she's so stressed out about being stabbed in the stomach.
And still doesn't learn to lock the fucking door.
Yeah, that is so perplexing to me, but you know what? AMAB. So, there's a bunch of, like, creepy things going on, and Mia's like, John, will you just throw away this doll? And he does. And John is gonna make Mia some popcorn, and this is very important. This is Chekhov's popcorn. And Mia falls asleep. And then the next day, Mia is sewing, watching TV, and the stove turns on by itself and
Also,
heats up the popcorn.
Important to note, he had to leave his bedridden wife, who was told that she could only get up to go to the bathroom if she's careful, for 24 hours so he could go to a medical conference.
Okay,
Yeah.
I hate to be the John defender here.
Oh, wow.
Wow!
Listen,
Wow!
do I think it sucks that he went to go do this thing? Yes. But do you know what sucks more is the way that we treat medical students in our country. Because what John was doing was he was networking so he would get a good placement for residency, because that's very important as far as your medical training goes. And that's why he had to go to this conference, was to like schmooze with doctors and like get a good word in. So I think that if we treated our medical students like people, maybe didn't make them work 80-hour weeks, maybe didn't make them leave their pregnant wives to go do networking so they can get haunted by dolls so they can get placement, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But no, we have a trash medical system from the top down. So
You're right.
If you take anything from this episode, the real villain is not haunted dolls, it's not demons, it's not even Satan, it's the U.S. healthcare system.
And the real victim is John.
well, no, I won't go that far.
He has to go through all of this and work. Ugh.
Listen, I would rather be haunted by this demon than be a medical student.
Okay, so any demons out there that are listening, Aaron has a doll for you. If you want to haunt it, it's available. And, just come on in.
I like your dolls.
Residency.
So Mia cuts her finger on her sewing machine.
Chekhov sewing
And-
machine.
That's one of the better scenes in this movie, I feel, because it constantly cuts between the sewing machine and the TV and like this popcorn bag that's like slowly getting hotter and hotter. And like, when she finally does cut her finger on the sewing machine, like there's a lot of tension, and it's like, oh, but then like it really wasn't that big a deal, and then her house catches on fire, and I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was great filmmaking and a reminder that, like, James Wan can really, like, polish a, like, shitty story into something very well directed. And I just really appreciate that, because right around here is where I feel like we just go left and never, ever, ever, ever get back on track.
Yes.
But we still get filmmaking moments like this that are beautifully done, and I think that scene belongs in a better horror movie.
And then 87 of her neighbors come in and rescue her from this fire that started 30 seconds ago.
Yep. So John runs in and finds Mia, and she's fine. And guess what? They have a baby girl that she named without him, because, you know what? I too would punish him because he missed not only the house catching on fire, the haunting I told him about, and the birth of his baby. Yeah, I feel like she gets to name the baby whatever the fuck she wants. And she decides not Annabelle, but Leah.
She's also like, hey, we're fucking moving.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
And they do move. Mia is unpacking her dolls, and she finds that Annabelle is back in in one of the boxes, and she just kind of puts it back up, which, like, if I knew I threw away something and it was just, like, back, I think I would spend a minute going, is it my memory or is something going on? Like, I'm not saying I would jump straight to demonic possession, but I wouldn't be like, that's weird. Put it back up.
This is how I know Michael and I have different neurological disorders. Because the amount of times I've been like, I know for a fact I don't have that object anymore, and it'll be in my hand. Like, I'll be like, I remembered specifically putting it in the trash can. and it will be right next to me.
Yes. So we meet two neighbor children in their new place who are coloring in the stairs. And the girl is like, hey, my name is, and her brother's like, no, don't talk to a stranger. And I love that. I really love that, like, no, we're not talking to a stranger energy. But these kids are not drawing, like, cute little things. They're drawing, like, these really intense things, like Mia taking Leah in a carriage and letting go in the way of a truck. And then one where Leah is dead, and like all these like brutal, really bloody scenes. And Mia shows them to John, and John just kind of makes light of it. And it's like, no, this is like some sociopathic shit. Like, you might want to check in.
He is so clearly trying to be like, hey, Mia, can you stop making my life hard? Like, he's just so clearly trying to make, like, can you stop being a problem? He's kind of a douche.
Yeah. All the bad husbands.
He does have a very good line, because they're arguing about these pictures, and you know, Mia's like, hey, should we, like, you know, talk to their parents about this? And John's like, oh, no. And she's like, well, you know, if Leah did something like this, you know, I would want to know about it. And he says, Leah wouldn't do anything like this. Look at the proportions. Which is extremely good.
You know, in this moment, I was like, is John a Virgo? Because that's some real, like, critical Virgo energy. If I saw a bunch of kids drawing some pictures of me being murdered and they were, like, poorly proportioned, I would be like, we need to work on your art skills before I would even be perturbed by them.
I just want to say, Mia, those aren't your drawings. Leave them on the ground. Those are not for you. Listen, see something, don't say a fucking thing. Just keep on moving.
Well, speaking of seeing things, one night Mia is alone and she sees the ghost of a little girl that we know as Annabelle Higgins.
Well, this is specifically because John said that he didn't work late, so he and her were going to have adult conversations. And then he didn't show up, so she sat there finishing her food. I don't know why this made me laugh, but she's got, like, quite a bit of mashed potatoes left, but then she reaches over and takes some of his mashed potatoes. And normally I'd be like, hey, man, you have your own, but no, fuck this guy. Steal his mashed potatoes.
Yeah, eat his food. Eat his food, spend his money.
So this is one of the two scenes that I found extremely scary in this, and that's probably because I was watching them directly and not through my fingers, but... So, like, there's this scene of this little girl just, like, standing in the opposite... So that you see this... It's framed as, like, from the room that Mia is standing in, looking through her door and into the door of another room across the hall. And you could see this little girl in the other door, in the other room. And she, like, starts running. The little girl starts running. And, like, she gets to the point where she goes behind the first door. And, like, you can't see her. And then... when the door pushes open, it becomes the adult Annabelle Higgins, and she, like, screams and, like, grabs Mia, and that scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh my god, was not expecting that. Pretty good scare.
That one was a really good scare, I think. And, you know, Mia agrees, because she actually contacts a detective that had told them about the murders that Annabelle Higgins committed, and... he tells them about the cult, the Disciples of the Ram, and they want to summon a demon by claiming the soul. And that's where it's like, okay, we could use some explanations, and, like, I get the retconning. I'm a very strong defender of, I think it's a better story. But you already had a demon. But I really like the idea of, let's just get some more in here. Like, I, too, have a more is more mentality, and, like, sometimes one demon isn't enough. Sometimes you have to add a second or a third. Let's make it a party.
This did feel like, Mom, can we stop for a demon? No, we have perfectly fine demon at home.
The demon at home is just a little Raggedy Ann doll.
Yeah.
I think another part of this that I don't want to skip over is when Mia is talking to John. John, this is really where John becomes, like, turbo douchebag, but he's just like, Mia, you know, these things are just manifestations of your anxiety. And And then she says to him, you know that being a doctor doesn't make you an expert on everything, right? And at that point, I tweeted that thing because I was like, oh, this is absolutely somebody like with me who has like some amount of medical knowledge. I can absolutely see me saying in a very bad moment and then absolutely getting just like my ass kicked for it. Because I was like, oh, that's, yeah, I've been that guy sometimes. And also he's like, when my parents were going through a rough patch, what we did? Church-based counseling. So they go to talk to the priest about their marital problems, which is cool.
I do like that John's like, hey, you know how that you saw a little girl? That's called hysteria. We should have sex more. Like, that's basically what he said.
Yeah.
I just want to say, at this point in time, historically speaking, there were, like, more serial killers than America knew what to do with. Like, this is prime time for there to be someone in your house trying to kill you. That happened to his wife. And his, like, response is like, I wish he'd just stop bugging me about it.
I mean, really. Now we get to go to one of my favorite places, and that is Evelyn's bookstore.
And we also get my least favorite character trope, which is just all of the writing around Evelyn.
Yes, it's the magical black character, and it fucking sucks.
We talked about...
And it is so evident in this film, and it's frankly distracting, and I hate it because I think that, like, the acting of the actress who plays Evelyn is just really well done. She's in a different film than everyone else.
No, she's phenomenal.
But...
listen, I don't blame her at all for doing this.
No.
Get your money, but whoever made her do these things, you can eat ass, and not in a good way.
I want to point out, last time we talked about how the movie just, like, put a lot of people in a rural house, and we were like, it's kind of interesting that there's no conversation about how this is a like, racially diverse group. Like, not even, like, a throwaway line, like, oh, isn't it awesome, like, that they're not racist. It's the 1940s. Everyone is literally racist. I'm so glad they didn't. I'm so glad that that was a much better portrayal of race than in this one.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of like the almost insinuation that, like, is purely accidental, I'm sure, that suburban America is, like, even more racist than rural America. It feels like such an accidental indictment that they stumbled into.
But this is still the universe where we traded racism, sexism, all of that's gone. Sexism is alive and well in this one. But we traded racism for demons. Still willing to make that trade. If any demon is listening and wants to get rid of racism.
Yeah. So after reading The Devil's Welcome, which I just love that for her. I love that Mia's like, yep, that's the book for me. And she is figuring out, oh shit, the demon that is bothering me wants Leah's soul. And so they contact the priest again. And he takes Annabelle, who is starting to look very scary. And he takes Annabelle to church. And then the ghost of Annabelle is also seen with a demonic-looking, like, figure. And the father enters the church, but is blown back by, like, some sort of entity. And he's thrown on his back. And then the ghost gets the doll.
We're missing a scene that answers one of our questions last time. We debated amongst ourselves whether the demon is, like, controlling Annabelle like a puppet, or if wearing Annabelle like a suit. We get that answered in this movie. So in what I dub the "your house is not earthquake safe" scene, Annabelle locks Mia in the baby's room while the baby's in the living room, and then throws books at the baby off of the bookshelf. I thought for sure the whole bookshelf was going to come down, and the baby was going to be perfectly in the middle in the safe spot like a cartoon, but we didn't get that scene. But then, while Mia is holding the baby, Annabelle slowly stands up and is lifted into the air, and I'm like, holy shit, Annabelle is, like, flying. No, the demon shows herself holding Annabelle So what happened is the demon just lifted a doll, which is a little less freaky than the doll levitating. Last point, because I just want to make sure I get this. While Mia's reading that book, she says Satan always goes for the weak and vulnerable, and then looks right at her fucking baby. Her weak ass baby. Her weak infant.
Shitty baby who doesn't even lift.
Dumbass baby.
Hey, you know what? When we talked about that on that podcast, we all looked at the same person. So maybe don't rag on the baby too much.
I do want to confess that scene with the books falling, with all the all it falling around baby Leah. I was like, oh no, I was like, kind of concerned for the baby, but not super concerned because I know that at this point in the movie they're not going to actually harm the baby just yet. But while she's watching this happen through the crack in her door, under it, Annabelle falls down and looks at her through the crack in her door, and I yelled at that point, like a deep-throated shout. That was the scariest part of this movie for me. And Sierra was there on the couch watching it with me and was not frightened at all. And I was that did scare me a little bit because I was just telling her I don't think this movie is that scary. And then that happened. I was like, okay, you got me.
The movie was
I
hold my holy
cannot wait
water.
for next week. Oh
yeah,
my
Conjure's
God.
gonna suck shit. I'm not thrilled.
Aaron, I'm going to be honest with you. Both of the past movies are under a 5 out of 10 for me, and I think we're probably similar on the spook scale. The next ones are 9s and 10s.
Good, awesome. I've heard that they're the scariest movies of the modern era, so I'm really psyched for this.
Pretty much. I'm so excited. But first, we have to get through this. So, John is actually treating the father at the hospital, which is so funny because it's all right, I guess there's one doctor and he's a resident and it's John.
That's true, though. That's just residency. It's just we'll put one doctor on this floor for 18 hours. He's going to have no experience and no sleep. Good luck.
I think if it was more accurate, instead of John sitting next to the father, it would be the father trying to get John's attention while he runs around saving lives.
So we get this really powerful moment with Evelyn and Mia where Evelyn's talking about her dead daughter who was Mia's age when she died, and it is supposed to explain some of the warmth and familiarity there. And it's again one of those character moments that I'm oh, we could have spent more time there. There were a lot of directorial writing script decisions that this made me think of. Evelyn could have been a more fleshed out character that did not exist solely to help this very frightened white blonde woman. But alas, that is not a thing. So she said that she was attempting suicide and then heard Ruby's voice telling her it's not her time. And, this is actually a sign that, okay, the only, otherworldly voices we hear are not necessarily demons, which is an interesting bit of in-universe lore.
I just want to slide one more fact in here before, cause you'll see why. The father says before he takes the doll that it's trying to get their souls, and the only way for a demon to get someone's soul is to get them to agree to it. And then John's well, I just won't agree to it. And the father's yeah, that's how it works. That's exactly how it works. Yeah, it's not... He's Satan, the father of lies. You got him. Got him in one.
Right. Being honest and upfront about your boundaries is Satan's weakness.
If the father had then just punched John, right in the stomach, that would have been I'd be oh!
So, the father does warn John that, hey, Annabelle's spirit is still around, and she's probably going to take a soul. And John tries to call Mia, but there's the static. And then in the apartment, the presence is starting to haunt Mia and Evelyn. It pushes Evelyn out of the apartment. It locks Mia outside of Leah's room. And all around the room that they're in, her soul is written in a red crayon, and this is a throwback to the Annabelle doll possession, including in the Our World story that there were little notes left around, like, play with me, come find me, in red crayon. So that's a little, like, Easter egg, I guess. And the doll appears to turn into, so Mia grabs the doll. I think this is one of the best scenes in the film. Again, I'm just like, how is this scene in this film? Because Mia is like, holy shit, my daughter's missing, and grabs the Annabelle doll and like beats it over the crib and then tosses it. And she sees the doll turn into Leah, like beaten and bloody and dead. And I just think like, oh my God, what a powerful scene. How is that in this film? And Mia is like...
both of those in there, though, because just her whacking the doll against the thing, I was in tears laughing. I was like, finally, body this little fucking doll, beat the shit out of it. That's why it looks so bad in the future, because this lady just took it to town.
Wailed on it.
Yeah, she did. But, you know, of course, it's not actually her baby. It turns into another doll that starts laughing, like this, like, maniacal little kid laugh. And again, I'm like, let's use the little kid laughs. They work. They work. I think demons should all use little kid voices.
Don't give them ideas, Michael.
And then it immediately undercuts all the good filmography with the fucking crayon writing, which is just like, it just writes all the stuff like, I want your soul on the ceiling, which I think is like so hackneyed. Like, I think it'd be so much more powerful if they didn't do all the writing stuff and just kind of like opened the window, instead of like having the window open and also having like big fucking red arrows all around the window.
Or even if it was just like scratches, I don't know. I think there were like cool things they could have done with that.
Yes, yeah, but like having it just like literally written in red crayon everywhere in the room was a little much.
Yes. So John and Evelyn break into the door. They find Mia ready to jump out the window with Annabelle. And John's like, Mia, no, there's got to be another way. And then...
I want to point out this is fun. I thought this was going to be a fun callback. Because earlier, John and Mia had the conversation about whether or not, if it comes to it, do you save Mia's life or the baby? And Mia looked at John and said, you fucking save the baby. And John's like, that's a fucking tough decision, but okay. And I thought that's what we were going for. And that's what I think the movie was calling back. But then he pulls her back, and then this terrible thing happens.
So, yeah, because Evelyn is like, oh, I got tired while I was driving, and that resulted in a car accident that killed my daughter, I have to atone for that by throwing myself out of the window holding this demon doll to save this white family's baby. And
going to hell. And going to... the demon gets her soul.
Yeah, trading my soul to a demon. Listeners, I'm going to put the TV tropes page for the magical Negro in the show notes, so you can just read this yourself. But this is a trope that is rife throughout media. It draws upon aspects of another trope, which is the noble savage, which is basically just being like, oh, in our Eurocentric, white-centric media landscape, we have, we look to people who are not us. We look to, people who are, Middle Eastern or African or Asian, basically, anybody who is not white, and we see them as other, but we can also see them as other and good instead of other and bad. And sometimes that means that they can use their otherness to help us. That's where we get, tropes about, magic and, witch doctors and, ancient Eastern medicines. And this is a trope that goes, for hundreds of years has persisted throughout our culture. And then it just got, transported into media, first with, our terrible, terrible racist portrayals of black people in blackface. And now in, certainly less pernicious, but still from the same evil fruit of the same racist tree. We get shit like this, we get stuff like in, a ton of Morgan Freeman roles where he's just like, I'm a black character in a white person's, story, and I'm going to help them advance their narrative. Pirates of the Caribbean, there's Tia Dalma, which is just really gross. I mean, you could argue, the Matrix is getting kind of close with Morpheus. It's a lot of M. Night Shyamalan movies, which are miserable.
I think what makes this one like extra insidious, which is not a movie we're watching, is
God.
that like
We will one day.
No, is the fact that like this is the only character that isn't white that I can think of that has a speaking line
In this franchise so far, and potentially in the other two Conjuring movies. I don't know. I would assume that is the case.
So we did get in the last film some diversity, but not
We
a
got
lot.
the nun, who is a Mexican American,
Yeah.
and she does have a speaking role, and that's great. But we got the only other black character was the little girl in that one, and she
Yep.
does not have many
not
lines.
a single speaking role. Yep.
It's fucking miserable, and just the way that it's explicitly framed as like a black person not only atoning for a thing that they didn't have to atone for because it was just an accident, but also making a sacrifice for a white couple. It's so fucking rancid. It makes me want to puke.
Yeah, it's like the grossest. I spent a lot of time talking about the positives of filmmaking, and this, it is maybe like the grossest, weakest storytelling moment in this entire film, and that's saying something because there were a lot of weak moments.
It's maybe one of the most racist moments in all of the media we've reviewed on this podcast, and we watch a lot of racist media. Like, we watched one about the Civil War, and it's, like, on par with that.
I'm sticking with God's Not Dead is still the most racist movie we've ever seen.
God's Not Dead is
Yeah.
the most racist because it has multiple different people of color being racist in different ways. But yes, this is, in density of racism, this one is certainly, it's up there.
It's like a small quantity that weighs a ton, if that makes sense. Like, it's not a number of scenes. It's just this huge black hole of, like, it just sucks the entire movie into this pit because they decided to go with this decision. And I'm glad you're dropping that, like, the link to that trope, because I think it's important for people to watch out for that kind of stuff, and also do better. Do better with your writing roles. This came out in 2014. This would be unacceptable, in my opinion, in the 90s. Like, come the fuck on.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And I'm going to give more free advice. I've given a lot of free advice this podcast. If you want to Venmo me, I can also put that in the show notes.
Then it's no longer free.
Well, it's 4 tips. I'm going to give you some advice for tips. If you are reacting to criticism about how lacking diversity your media is, the answer is not this. Period. Full stop. Free advice.
Because we'll have some
You can still
conversations next week about the movie and like its handling of race and lack thereof. But this is bad. This is bad.
Yeah. We're almost at the finish line. So after all of this trauma, Leah's in her crib, and the couple moves on, and they haven't seen Annabelle. And we see a woman who is the mother of one of the nurses in the very beginning, comes into the store looking for a present. She finds the rare collector's item of the Hasbro murder dolls and purchases Annabelle.
With the Raggedy Ann doll in the background.
Yes. Little Easter egg about the real Annabelle. And the ending text says the Annabelle doll is in Ed and Lorraine's little museum in their home. It's blessed by a priest twice a month. And there's a quote from Lorraine that says, "Evil's real. We can contain it, but not get rid of it." And the camera cuts to Annabelle and then fades to black. And that is this film.
So this one was a rough one.
Yeah.
This one was a rough one. God. I have some notes about the production. I think it's very funny that the director, John Leonetti, was just like, the quote that I found from the Wikipedia page was that he capitalizes on the built-in fan bases for successful films, allowing for smaller budgets and production time with a bigger payout on the back end, which is like, yeah, John, that's franchises. That's just how that works. But like this film was shot in 25 days with a budget of $5 million, which is kind of impressive. But ultimately the critical reception, it was just, like we found it, just obliterated it, and rightfully so.
But also, this movie made $250 million.
Incredibly successful.
I mean, I watched this film in theaters, so yeah.
The Conjureverse is, like, horror movies make a lot of money on very low budgets, and I think the Conjureverse is, like, quintessential that. But they were able to make a couple good movies sprinkled in with these absolute stinkers.
Yeah, I mean, this really is truly a, like, bare bones situation in terms of budget, but the Conjuring films are kind of known for doing that. We'll talk about that with the first film next week. But one of the things that the Conjuring universe really does well is take a withholding budget on cutting special effects out and really, like, leaning into, like, the creepiness and the suspense and creating what ends up being a blockbuster. Now, with this film, they made a lot of money, but at what cost?
Well, about $3.99 a piece.
Yeah, I mean, this film is the third lowest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes of the franchise. And, I was debating...
I'm sorry, that fact got less and less impressive as it went on. When you said it was the third lowest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes, I was like, Jesus Christ, the series.
No.
Oh, okay, The Nun still exists.
Of the series. Yeah, The Nun is still the worst film ever made by this universe, and you can't convince me otherwise. I liked Annabelle Comes Home a lot more, but it also is a film that frankly doesn't make a lot of sense without this one. I also think this one ties better in with our overarching story because it begins and ends with what we'll launch The Conjuring with. So you have that to look forward to next week. But what did you all think other than hating everything about this? Like, anything else that you want to add?
I mean, I think I basically said it all. There are a couple very good cinematographic moments. There was one thing I forgot to mention. Like, there's a point where, like, there's a music player that goes off by itself, and, like, if you look above the music player, then the reflection of the picture that's hanging above it, you can see something, like, moving in the background, and, like, that's really good, and I love that shit. But, like, just everything else about this movie sucked.
Yeah.
This movie franchise does suspense better than anything else I've ever seen. It builds suspense in a way that, like, other than a couple, like, Netflix one-off series, I cannot think of anything that's done better. This movie filled me with a pit of, which is not what you want movies to give you.
Especially a horror film.
I will give my spooky rating, which was, I was freaked out at one point in this movie.
Yeah, so let's get into our proper ratings.
I'm going to give one brought to you by our friends and family at Hasbro. Buy haunted shit.
I'm going to give this the fourth Station of the Cross, Jesus Meets His Mother, because while it does touch on themes of parenting and motherhood, again, it is just a long, tortured metaphor, and I hated it.
I am going to give this one bloody doll tear, because this movie made me cry, not for the reasons that it should.
Oh, ain't that the truth? Well, when we're not, when we're trying to watch better and talk about better things, where can people find us on the internet?
Just drop in next week. Catch us for The Conjuring, so watch along if you'd like to. But I'm at Green History on Twitter.
I'm at Michael's Diamonds on Twitter, and I might watch The Conjuring tonight.
I'm at AaronSXL on Twitter, where I talk about health policy and tabletop games. You can listen to the other podcasts I do at Mortified Pod. Like I said, me and Layla just watched Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, another franchise that is both heavy on retcons, but also does them a lot better than Annabelle does, in my opinion. So check that out if you're interested. And again, yeah, this is spooky season is a big time for us. Me and Josh are making a lot of personal sacrifices, but it is an important time for the Bible Boys. So if you are enjoying these, please tell your friends about us and try to get them to listen, because it's a great time to bring on new listeners who might be intimidated by the fact that we mostly just talk about Christian bullshit. If you, like me though, are just weeping at the fact that you wasted $3.99 on this miserable film, just remember that it is okay to cry because even Jesus wept. We'll see you all next time.